Joining me now is Sean Rees, who is one of Plaid Cymru's Llanelli Town Councillors. Sean, you've spoken at the march to commemorate the 1911 Llanelli rail strike. How do you feel the event went?
Well, firstly, I'd like to begin by thanking today's organisers for asking me to speak at such an important event in the history of Llanelli. There is a tipping point in all of us, and clearly this had been breached back in 1911. A stand had to be taken. We will only take so much. It was back in 1911, of course, when industrial unrest reached its peak. Gas workers here in Llanelli were campaigning for more wages, while the miners up in Trimsaran had been on strike for 2 months, and this continued throughout the year. Hardly surprising when we consider that wages had remained static since 1900 and the cost of living had gone up by 12.5%. Similarities today, of course. I am tired of seeing our communities being taken for granted. This really isn't as good as it gets. Poor decision making, the vested interests of successive Tory Labour governments have brought us to where we are today. Decades of the underfunding of our public services, and enough is enough.
So what do you feel the UK and Welsh governments could be doing to address the growing issues of poverty and lack of opportunity in our communities?
Well, it's ordinary people, of course, who have suffered the most. We've had the growing gap between the rich and the poor, and the people of this constituency know all about that. Now, what Plaid Cymru would do would be to introduce a proper living wage and end 0 hour contracts. So our workers have the security, they have a regular income to improve living standards. What worries me is the ongoing stagnation of wages, which has meant more and more people have had to turn to food banks. Food banks existing in the 21st century. And while that may be unfortunate, we do owe a debt of thanks to the volunteers who operate them. The day that society no longer accepts people for who they are is the day that society is no longer strong and stable, but more weak and broken. And it really shouldn't matter where the working people of a society come from. We're all vulnerable to the tactics used by multinationals to exploit us in any corner of the globe. My message would be that we should not be deceived by the Tory myth of compassionate capitalism, because it simply doesn't exist.
Fair point. A key part of your speech was centred around the waste of public money. Where would you suggest that savings could and should be made?
Well, to expand on your last point as well, what governments should be doing now, they should be looking to build our economy and making it work for everyone, not just the privileged few. They should be investing in health and social care so patients here can access services if, when and where they need them. And we should be looking to create opportunities for all our young people so that they can reach their full potential. Now, in terms of saving money, one of the topics that I discussed was Trident today, and I would have hoped for some clarity from the Shadow Defence Secretary, who happens to be Llanelli's Member of Parliament, of course, as to what her party's current position is on Trident. I would hope that she would support her own party leader and indeed the long-standing view of Plaid Cymru, in that we should be spending on hope and not fear. Think about how £100 billion can make a difference to our communities. And I would argue that defence really ought to be tailored now to the needs that we face now. Instead of wasting this money on what can only be described as an ancient relic of the Cold War, we should be spending on our schools, our hospitals, and all our public services. And I feel we're only going to be able to achieve this if Wales is empowered with the tools to allow people here to have a say on the issues that affect us. Decisions that affect Wales should be made in Wales. They should not be left in the hands of the Tories. And it's only by obtaining more control over our own affairs that we will be able to construct our own economic plan and ultimately achieve our goal of self-determination.
Thank you. And just finally, how important do you feel it is to continue to mark this event annually, and additionally, of course, to teach children in Wales about the history both of our country and of our communities?
I think it's crucial, and there's definitely an argument for greater teaching of Welsh history in our schools. this is for our future generations to learn of our proud past. We as a town should never allow our proud history to be disregarded. I believe it was Gwynalf Williams who said there is nothing ignoble about remembering a period when working class people emerged from the shadows of history. The tragic events of 1911 should provide inspiration to all of us today. It should drive us in our modern lives to fight for what is right and for what is just, because as clearly shown here today, it is in solidarity that we trust.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.